Gunchbags, what's going on? It's Landon Remixes here, and it is time for a review of this new EP from Slumberjack entitled Sarawak. Slumberjack is an Australia-formed electronic music production duo comprised of Morgan Then and Fletcher Ellers, and primarily concerning themselves with future bass and hybrid trap. Slumberjack has been gaining a lot of notoriety and steam as a project over the last few years, collaborating with some of the bigwigs of Australia's electronic music scene. They also scored some crucial remix opportunities, and all of these things kind of work together to help push Slumberjack into the spotlight. Though this technically may be my first time talking about a Slumberjack project on my YouTube channel, I've actually reviewed numerous projects they've been a part of. They had a collaboration with Alice in Wonderland on her 2015 debut album Run, which was one of the very first albums I ever reviewed and one of the first that I ever gave a negative review of. They were featured on Porter Robinson's World's Remixed album with a Fellow Feeling remix that I absolutely loved. They co-produced track number 1, Warlord, off of the debut What So Not album that came out last year. They had a follow-up collaboration with Alice in Wonderland on her album last year, which I also reviewed. So one might think it surprising that I've never actually reviewed one of their original projects, not even on my rapid fire review series. I think it was following the release of Warlord, I thought to myself, okay, it's probably about time to dig into Slumberjack a little bit deeper, and I downloaded their Fracture EP, I added it to my Apple Music library and everything like that, and I just never got around to listening to it. And regretfully so, because that EP is definitely a project worth checking out, but that's a story for another time. Then again, maybe it was actually better that I hadn't listened to too much of their previous music, because when they started putting out releases on Monstercat, I was all that much more floored. When their first Monstercat released single, Daggers, came out, I can say I was knocked off my feet a little bit, and not because I thought it was absolutely fantastic at that time, but more because it was just a very strange release. Very different from what I had heard from Slumberjack in the past, being that it was a rock, future bass kind of hybrid. I'd almost even say that Daggers is more of a rock song than it is an electronic song, and I'll be honest, I didn't really like it all that much as a single. I don't even think I placed it in my top 5 for Monstercat Instinct Volume 2, but that was before I really understood the full scope of the Sarawak EP and what exactly it was going to bring to the table. And when I finally started to put all the pieces together, I could really see what makes this project so special. Before I dig into this, I'd like to say that if you guys haven't checked out the Sarawak mini-series on Slumberjack's YouTube channel, you really should. It really gives you an appreciation for how much detail went into this project, and not only in terms of like the instrumentation and the sound design, but I guess the overall theme of this EP. If you guys aren't familiar with the premise of this project, essentially it was started in the midst of a kind of creative drought for Slumberjack, completely exhausted from touring and not feeling like they had a way to take their music to the next level. So Then and Ellers went off and took a trip to Sarawak, which, if you didn't know, is a Malaysian state on the island of Borneo. I've obviously never been there, so I don't want to skew any information, but from what I understand, it is a very jungly kind of state, very remote and far away from civilization. Definitely not primitive, and I'm not even sure if I would say tribal, but still very distant from modern technology. The twist here is that Morgan Then of Slumberjack is actually from Sarawak. So their purpose of going there, at least in the context of this project, wasn't necessarily to receive inspiration from going to a new place, but rather to reconnect to Then's roots, simultaneously taking sonic inspiration from the sights and sounds of Sarawak, sampling different instruments and percussion that are native to the area, designing sounds in the studio in order to replicate the reverberation of different areas in Sarawak, for example, a cave in the jungle. All the detail that went into this project is honestly amazing. It's just such an uncommon thing for bass music artists to do, to take their music and just push it beyond the surface, to immerse listeners into their world, and to that extent. It's just something that I'll always appreciate this project for. But even not knowing that information, just from a surface level level view, this EP is still fantastic. It is such an ambitious blend of styles. I mean, no two tracks on this project really sound all that much alike, but I think that the Malaysian instruments and samples just tie every song so well together, in addition to the fact that every single song on this EP just sounds huge, like larger than life. Truly, I have never heard rock and EDM blended in the same way that they are on Daggers, with those powerful electric guitar chords backed by a future bass beat and some unique vocal chops. I think those clunky little piano chords that kind of randomly come in during the drop are pretty charming as well in kind of a strange way. I think that tribal percussion in the intro of the song really sets the tone very nicely for the rest of the EP. That intro actually reminded me a lot of the intro on by Selena Gomez my first few listens through it, but honestly on this song it just feels so much more intentional and welcome to me as a listener. And also just a killer vocal performance from Machine Age on this one. The lyrics are very well written too. They almost came off in a sort of grotesque way. Take that wicked tongue and cut it out of my head, just shivers. Athena is also a pretty big one in my book. Even though my first few runs through this EP I didn't necessarily love it, I grew to appreciate it for a multitude of different reasons. Primarily the song's use of drumline snares, which I absolutely love hearing in the background of this song, actually reminded me of Loyal by Odessa quite a bit, and though I don't think anything beats seeing Odessa live with the drumline playing this song, I actually like Athena more than the studio version of Loyal. Just in terms of Slumberjack creating the perfect atmosphere to go with those snares, they don't feel thrown over the top or anything like that. They really sink into the song like they're a crucial piece of it. And though the song's lead melody can feel a little bit stale after some time, especially in the first drop, I think Athena's overall progression more than makes up for it. With 3 unique drops that each add another layer of depth and complexity, the melodic drop toward the end of the track is definitely a big highlight for me, but I'll be honest, the thing that I really like listening to is those drumline snares. In the very center of the EP, we've got Hide and Seek featuring Claire Ridgely, which throws listeners into the middle of another one of Ridgely's really broken relationships. I don't know if you guys have heard Ghost Boy by Robotalkie, but it seems like Claire Ridgely is always getting the short stick. Hide and Seek seems to follow a very similar situation where Ridgely just can't quite connect with this person. It makes me genuinely feel bad for her, which is, I think, a sign of great songwriting. This song, in my opinion, is also one of her better vocal performances. I feel like lately she's really been pushing herself in that department. Not to mention that her hooks also just sound really great over future bass. I felt the same way about Show and Tell. For me, Claire Ridgely is really the highlight of the song, as there's nothing too crazy going on in Slumberjack's department, but that's not necessarily a bad thing because this is also the most heavily pop-leaning song on the EP. I kind of wish there was a little bit more variation between the first hook and the second, but honestly, I'm okay with it when it's just this one song that's like that. Of course, once again, Slumberjack did a great job blending in those elements of Sarawak into this song, even though it is a very, like, Americanized pop song at the same time. Solid is honestly pretty incredible and definitely my favorite cut from the EP. I had my expectations set pretty high, you know, considering Slumberjack and Troy Boy being on the bill, but even then, like, my mind was pretty blown with this song. I'm honestly not even completely sure how to explain why this song is so great to me. I guess I'd just say that without a doubt, this is one of the most unique pieces of electronic trap I've ever had the pleasure of listening to. It seems like Slumberjack and Troy Boy were not at all afraid to kind of get off the grid both rhythmically and melodically, and somehow it pays off in every instance on the song. The beat is just fantastic, and I absolutely love the groove and that bass line on the drop. The second drop takes a little bit more of a melodic approach with these big, impactful chords, but the chords are only used sparingly, so little that the impact just happens right where it needs to be. This song is genius, just absolutely insane. Fittingly, the project closes with a tune called Closure, done in collaboration with Ikali. I was really surprised that this one didn't get an upload on the Monstercat channel, just considering how big Ikali is. But at the same time, I'm not really upset about it because admittedly, this is probably my least favorite song on the project. Not to say that I don't think it isn't good, because I actually do think it is on a lot of different levels, but it is definitely the most underwhelming on the project to me, probably just because Ikali's name is on it. Definitely isn't the most surprising or cutting edge tune on the EP. I would probably put it on par with their collaboration on Ikali's last EP. I do think the intro of the song is great. I mean, Slumberjack's ability to blend in those jungle drums with this style of music, I think is pretty much unparalleled, and it shines really well on this song. I guess the drop to me is where things feel a bit more underwhelming than usual. They're going for this kind of call and response deal where this big trap melody is followed by this lighter and more subtle melody. The whole thing sounds very synthesized. I would have very much liked to hear some big brass undertones with that trap melody. Maybe have the response sections be even more subtle and pulled back. I do think the idea behind the drop is perfectly fine. It's just the way it was executed didn't exactly please my ears as much as the rest of the EP did. Still a pretty solid song though. I mean, I don't have too much to complain about it, and it is a fitting closer for the project. Nonetheless, I have thoroughly enjoyed listening to this project over and over and over again. I feel like its theme is so big, Slumberjack could have easily made an album out of this. Then again, if they did, maybe it wouldn't have ended up being as near perfect as it is. I'm happy to say that at this point in time, I have listened to every single Slumberjack EP, and as good as I think Fracture is, this one is a huge step in the right direction, in my opinion. The duo has outdone themselves once again, and I'll be really excited if they continue to do that. Would strongly recommend checking out this EP if you haven't yet. It's definitely worth a listen, or maybe 20. For Sarawak, I'm feeling a strong 9 out of 10. As always, if you guys haven't listened to this yet, you can find the Spotify link down in the description below. And if you have listened to it, make sure to let me know what you think down in the comment section. Anyway, I'm Landon Remixes. I'll see you guys next time. Peace out.